Everyone knows Cleopatra seduced Julius Caesar, charmed Mark Antony, ruled Egypt as a goddess made flesh. The movies show you the beauty, the power, the romance. They don't show you the bodies. They don't show you what she did to get that throne, what she had to do to keep it, what happened to anyone who shared her bloodline and dared stand in her way. This isn't a story about seduction. This is a story about power and what someone is willing to erase to keep it. Power in ancient Egypt was never shared. It was taken, and once taken, it had to be defended from the only people close enough to steal it. In the Ptolemaic dynasty, the greatest threat to a ruler was never a foreign army. It was the person sitting beside them on the throne, the person who shared their blood, the person who slept in the next room. In that world, loyalty lasted only as long as it was useful. Love was a liability, and survival often meant making sure you were the last one left standing. Before we step inside the palace where this story turns dark, drop a comment with your city and country, because once you see how far someone will go to keep a throne, you may never look at power or family the same way again. Deep inside the Palace of Alexandria, in a room you've never seen in any film, a young woman watches a condemned prisoner die. She's taking notes because she's testing the poison on the dying man in front of her. The poison reaches his blood, and his body betrays him. A tremor, a gasp, foam at the mouth. His knees give out. Within minutes, he is still. Cleopatra doesn't look away. She watches the order of it. The timing, how fast the breath fades, whether it looks like suffering or sickness, whether anyone in the room would suspect poison at all. This is not curiosity, it is preparation. She's practicing because she has a specific target in mind, someone she needs dead, someone whose death has to look like natural causes. Her 15-year-old brother, who also happens to be her husband. Yes, you heard that right. Her brother and her husband the same person, who also happens to be her co-ruler, the boy who sits beside her on Egypt's throne, who shares her power, who stands between her and absolute control. His name is Ptolemy XIV, and he has no idea his sister-wife is planning his murder, but he's not her first sibling, and he won't be her last. To understand what Cleopatra did, you need to understand what she learned, and that lesson came when she was 14 years old, standing in the palace, watching her older sister die. Berenice, beautiful, ambitious, capable Berenice. She'd ruled Egypt for 3 years while their father was in Rome begging for military support, and she'd ruled it well. The people loved her. The priests supported her. Egypt prospered under her hand. And then their father came back with a Roman army behind him and very specific ideas about what happened to daughters who took power that didn't belong to them. Cleopatra watches the executioner raise the blade. She watches her sister forced to her knees. She watches Berenice's head separate from her body, watches it fall, watches the blood pool on the palace floor. She's 14. Her sister is around 25. And their father, the man who ordered this, the man who had his own daughter beheaded for the crime of ruling too well, he makes sure all his remaining children witness this, makes sure they understand. This is what happens when you take power you're not supposed to have. This is what happens when you threaten someone's throne. This is what family means in the Ptolemy dynasty. Kill or be killed. Murder or be murdered. Survive or become a lesson for whoever comes next. Cleopatra learns. Oh, she learns so very well. 4 years later, her father dies. Natural causes this time, the kind of death that just happens when you're old and paranoid and have spent your whole life drowning in wine and worry. And the succession is clear, written in his will, approved by Rome. Cleopatra and her younger brother Ptolemy XIII will rule together. Co-rulers, husband and wife, brother and sister. She's 18, he's 10. They're married, of course. That's how it works in the Ptolemy family. Brother-sister marriage, keeping the bloodline pure, keeping the power concentrated, making sure the throne stays in the family. It's been this way for 300 years. Generation after generation of siblings forced to marry each other, forced to share power, forced to pretend they're not constantly plotting each other's deaths. Because that's the other Ptolemy tradition, the one that doesn't get carved into monuments or painted on temple walls. The murder. The endless, systematic, predictable murder. Uncles killing nephews. Mothers killing sons. Brothers killing sisters. Sisters killing brothers. Over and over and over for 3 centuries. A family that stays in power by regularly killing itself. Cleopatra was raised in this. She breathed it. She watched her sister's execution at 14 and understood. This is normal. This is what royal families do. This is the price of the throne. So when her 10-year-old brother husband starts listening to his advisors, when those advisors start start suggesting that maybe Egypt doesn't need a queen. Maybe a king alone would be better. Maybe Cleopatra should step aside. She knows exactly what's coming. She's seen this play before. She knows how it ends. She leaves, flees to Syria, raises an army, comes back ready for war. And that's when Julius Caesar arrives, the most powerful man in Rome, chasing his enemy Pompey, who's just been murdered on Egypt's shore. Caesar expects to find a grateful client kingdom. Instead, he finds a civil war. Cleopatra famously smuggles herself into his presence rolled in a carpet. And yes, she seduces him. And yes, she's brilliant and beautiful and everything the legends say. But here's what the legends leave out. She doesn't just seduce Caesar for romance. She seduces him because she needs Rome's legions to kill her brother. And it works. The Battle of the Nile. Ptolemy XIII's forces against Caesar's legions and Cleopatra's ambition. The official history says Ptolemy died fleeing the battle, drowned in the Nile River. Tragic accident. Young king lost in the chaos of war. His body was found days later, weighted down with his golden ceremonial armor, washed up on the shore. But here's the thing about golden armor. It's heavy, very heavy. Heavy enough to drag a grown man to the bottom of a river. Heavy enough to make sure a wounded, exhausted, terrified 13-year-old boy who's just watched his army destroyed would have no chance of swimming to safety. Some historians whisper that the armor was put on him after he was already dead. Others suggest he was fleeing on horseback, fell in the river, and the weight of the gold did the rest. But there's a third possibility, one that fits the pattern, one that makes sense if you understand who Cleopatra really was. He was wounded in the battle, maybe badly, maybe not. He made it to the river, tried to escape, and Cleopatra's soldiers, the ones loyal to her, the ones who knew what she wanted, they made sure he drowned. They held him under, maybe, or they shot him from the shore, or they simply watched as the golden armor dragged him down and did nothing, as the boy who'd been king gurgled and sank and died. Ptolemy XIII went into that river alive and came out dead. Cleopatra's most immediate threat, eliminated. Her brother, her husband, her co-ruler, gone. She was 21 years old. She just won her first civil war. She just orchestrated her first sibling's death, one down. But Egypt needs a pharaoh, and tradition demands it be a pair, male and female. Brother and sister, husband and wife. So Cleopatra does what's expected. She marries her remaining younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. He's 11 years old. She makes him her co-ruler, puts him on the throne beside her, presents him to Egypt as her husband and her partner. And then she ignores him completely. Because she has Caesar now. She has Rome's support, Rome's legions, Rome's protection. She has power without needing to share it with some child husband whose only qualification for the throne is that he shares her DNA. Ptolemy XIV sits on his throne, wears his crown, appears in ceremonies, but everyone knows who really rules. Everyone understands this is Cleopatra's Egypt now. For 4 years it works. Caesar visits, fathers her son Caesarion, goes back to Rome and gets himself assassinated by senators who fear he's becoming a king. And Cleopatra waits in Egypt with 2 sons now, Caesarion, Caesar's child, and Ptolemy XIV, her brother husband, who's starting to grow up, starting to have his own opinions, starting to maybe wonder why his sister wife treats him like a ceremonial prop instead of a real king. And that's when he becomes inconvenient. Because Cleopatra has a plan. Caesar's dead, but his heir is coming, young Octavian, who'll eventually call himself Augustus and rule Rome for decades. And she needs Egypt secure, needs her power absolute, needs no complications, no rival claimants, no teenage brother-husband who might get ideas about actually ruling. She needs Ptolemy XIV gone. So she goes back to that room, the one where prisoners die. She goes back to her notes, her careful documentation of symptoms and timing and detection. She's had years to think about this, years to plan. She knows which poison she wants now, knows how to administer it, knows how to make it look like illness, natural causes, tragic but unavoidable. Picture her watching another prisoner convulse, another test subject confirming what she already knows. This one, yes, this poison leaves no obvious trace. This poison mimics the symptoms of common illness. This poison will work. Ptolemy XIV is 15 years old when he dies. The official cause is listed as disease, sudden illness, the kind of thing that just happens sometimes in Alexandria's heat and disease and crowded streets. He's co-ruler 1 week, dead the next, mourned publicly and replaced immediately. Replaced by Caesarion, Cleopatra's 3-year-old son, her new co-ruler, a toddler who can't read, can't write, can't rule, can't threaten her in any possible way. From teenage husband to toddler co-ruler, from potential rival to literal infant, the message is clear. Cleopatra doesn't share power, she just pretends to. And when the pretense becomes inconvenient, the co-ruler dies. That's 2 brothers dead, 2 brother husbands eliminated, 2 threats removed. But there's still a sister, and Cleopatra has a very, very long memory. Her name is Arsinoe, younger sister, the one who sided with Ptolemy XIII during the Civil War, the one who declared herself queen while Cleopatra was seducing Caesar. She lost, Caesar won, Cleopatra won, and Arsinoe paid the price. She walked in Caesar's triumph, 17 years old, beautiful, terrified, dragged through Rome's streets in chains, while crowds screamed insults and threw things and described what they wanted to do to her. She heard the screams of other captured queens that day, the ones who weren't famous enough to protect, the ones who got exactly what Roman soldiers wanted after victory. If you want to understand what Roman victory really meant for defeated queens, we made a full video on it, and it is far worse than most people imagine. You can watch it from the card in the top right or the link in the description. She heard and she understood how lucky she was, how being Cleopatra's sister and Caesar's captive saved her from worse. But Caesar showed mercy, or what passed for mercy in Roman terms. Instead of execution, exile. Instead of death, permanent removal. He sent her to Ephesus, to the Temple of Artemis, to live as a priestess, celibate and powerless and far from Egypt. And for years it works. Arsinoe lives in that temple, performs her duties, keeps her vows. She never speaks of Egypt, never claims the throne, never causes problems. She survives by being invisible, by making everyone forget she exists. But Cleopatra doesn't forget. Years pass. Caesar dies. Cleopatra takes Mark Antony as her lover, her partner, her weapon against Rome. She has power now. Real power. The kind that doesn't need to worry about one exiled sister living quietly in a temple thousands of miles away. Except she does worry, because Arsinoe is still alive. Still a Ptolemy. Still a potential rival. A potential symbol for anyone who wants to challenge Cleopatra's rule. And Cleopatra has learned her lesson well. You don't leave threats alive. You don't wait for them to become problems. You eliminate them when you can, how you can, completely and permanently. So she asks Mark Antony for a favor, just one small favor. There's this woman, you see, this exile, this former queen who dared challenge Rome. She's living in a temple, protected by sanctuary, yes, protected by sacred law, certainly, but surely for Cleopatra, for Egypt's queen, for the woman Antony loves, surely he can arrange something, and he does. The assassins come during a festival, during a ceremony, when the temple is full of worshippers and the rituals are at their most sacred. They don't care. They're not there for piety. They're there for Arsinoe. They find her at the altar, grab her, drag her down the temple steps while priests scream and worshippers scatter, and the sacred space is violated in the worst way possible, and they kill her there on those steps, in front of everyone. Not because Arsinoe had done anything, not because she'd plotted or schemed or threatened. She'd been living quietly for years, causing no trouble, forgotten by everyone except the one person who mattered. Cleopatra killed her sister not for what she was doing, but for what she represented. Killed her not in rage, but in cold calculation. Waited years, let Arsinoe think she was safe, let her build a life in exile, and then struck precisely when it was convenient. That's the darkest part. Not the murder itself, but the patience, the calculation, the cold understanding that you can let a threat survive for years and years as long as you know you'll eliminate it when the time is right. 3 siblings dead, the pattern complete. But why? Why this systematic elimination? Why this patient, calculated, thorough destruction of her own family? Because she was a Ptolemy, and for 300 years, this is what Ptolemies did. The dynasty started with Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals who took Egypt after Alexander died, and founded a kingdom that would last 3 centuries. And from the very beginning, from that first Ptolemy to Cleopatra at the end, the family had 2 unbreakable traditions. First, brother-sister marriage. Keep the bloodline pure. Keep the power concentrated. Keep the throne in the family by making sure the family only ever married itself. Generation after generation of siblings forced into marriage, forced into producing heirs, forced into pretending this was normal and natural and the will of the gods. Second, murder. Constant, predictable, systematic murder. Because here's what happens when you force siblings to share power. They kill each other for it. Ptolemy IV had his mother assassinated. Ptolemy VIII killed his nephew, then married his nephew's widow, who was also his sister. Ptolemy XI murdered his stepmother, who'd made him co-ruler. On and on and on. 30-some pharaohs over 300 years, and nearly every succession involved murder. Nearly every generation saw siblings killing siblings, parents killing children, children killing parents. It wasn't aberration, it was tradition. It wasn't shocking, it was expected. Children in the Ptolemy family were raised knowing they would either kill their siblings or be killed by them. That was just how it worked. That was the price of being royal. Cleopatra didn't invent this system, she just perfected it. She was more successful at sibling murder than any Ptolemy before her. More thorough, more patient, more complete. By the time she was done, every sibling was dead, every potential rival eliminated, every threat removed. She started at 18 with a civil war and finished in her 30s with a temple assassination. And in between, she killed with poison and proxy and perfect cold calculation. And the whole time, she presented herself as Isis, goddess incarnate, the loving mother, the divine queen, the savior of Egypt. She built temples, she performed sacred rites, she dressed in Isis's robes and crown, and declared herself the goddess's living representative on earth, while murdering her family systematically. That's the cognitive dissonance that breaks your brain. Loving mother goddess who poisons her teenage brother husband, divine queen who has her sister assassinated at a temple altar, Egypt's savior who eliminates anyone who shares her blood. And it worked. For decades it worked. She ruled Egypt longer and more successfully than almost any Ptolemy before her. She kept the kingdom independent when Rome was swallowing everything else. She played Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, seduced them both, used them both, almost pulled off the impossible trick of making Egypt Rome's equal instead of its subject. All of it built on a foundation of murdered siblings. The Romans knew. They documented it. They used it against her in their propaganda after she died, painted her as a monster who killed her own family, a barbarian who violated every natural law. But here's the funny thing. Romans accepted murder. They understood political assassination. They'd just stabbed Julius Caesar to death in the Senate House surrounded by senators. They had no moral high ground here. What disturbed them wasn't that Cleopatra killed, it was how she killed. The patience, the planning, the cold, systematic elimination, the way she could smile at her brother husband while plotting his murder, the way she could wait years to kill her sister, let her think she was safe, then strike without warning or mercy. That scared them. That level of calculation, that depth of cold-blooded patience. Because here's what you need to understand. Cleopatra wasn't passionate. She wasn't hot-blooded or impulsive or driven by rage. She was the opposite. She was ice. She was mathematics. She was 300-year-old family tradition perfected into an art form. When Berenice was beheaded, 14-year-old Cleopatra didn't cry. She watched, she learned, she understood. When Ptolemy XIII drowned, weighted down in golden armor, 21-year-old Cleopatra didn't mourn. She consolidated power. She moved on. When Ptolemy XIV died of convenient poison, 25-year-old Cleopatra replaced him with her toddler son and kept ruling. When Arsinoe was murdered on temple steps, 30-something Cleopatra was already planning her next move with Rome, already thinking about Antony and Octavian and the coming civil war that would determine whether Egypt survived as a kingdom or became just another Roman province. The siblings were just obstacles, problems to solve, threats to eliminate. She felt no guilt that we know of, expressed no regret, showed no hesitation. They stood between her and absolute power, so they had to die. Simple as that. Cold as that. And when it was done, when every sibling was dead and she sat alone on Egypt's throne with no one left to challenge her, no one left who shared her blood and her crown, what did she feel? We don't know. She never said. Maybe relief, maybe satisfaction, maybe nothing at all. She ruled for 21 years after her last sibling died. 21 years of absolute power. No co-rulers, no rivals, no threats from her own family. Just Cleopatra, alone, exactly as she'd planned. And then Octavian won. Rome won. The final battle turned against her, and she knew what was coming, knew what Roman victory meant for conquered queens, knew she'd face Octavian's triumph and everything that came after. So she chose the snake, chose death, chose to die a queen rather than live as Rome's trophy. In her final moments, holding that asp, did she think about her siblings, about the brother husbands she'd murdered, the sister she'd had killed at a temple altar, the family she'd systematically eliminated to get and keep the power she was about to lose forever? Probably not. She was too practical for ghosts, too cold for regret. She was a Ptolemy to the very end, and Ptolemies didn't apologize for murder. They just did what was necessary to survive, to rule, to win. She pressed the snake to her skin and died free, died a queen, died Egyptian, never walked in Octavian's triumph, never wore his chains, never became his lesson to the world. And somewhere in whatever afterlife the ancient Egyptians believed in, 4 siblings waited. 2 brothers she'd murdered, 1 sister she'd had assassinated, 1 sister she'd watched die. The family reunion must have been interesting. This is what Cleopatra did to her siblings to become queen. This is the price she paid, the price they paid, the price the Ptolemy dynasty had been paying for 300 years. Murder and marriage and murder again, over and over, generation after generation, until there were no more Ptolemies left. She was the last, the final pharaoh, the end of the line, and she ended it exactly the way her family had lived it. In blood, in calculation, in cold, systematic elimination of everyone who stood in her way. The movies show you the beauty and the romance. Now you know the bodies. Now you know what it really took. Now you know what Cleopatra did to her siblings. 4 murders, 4 eliminated threats, 4 people who shared her blood and her crown and died because of it. And the question that remains, the one that echoes through 20 centuries, was it worth it? All that murder, all that calculation, all that cold-blooded patience, just to rule Egypt for 2 decades before Rome took it anyway, before Octavian won and everything she'd built collapsed and the kingdom she'd killed for ceased to exist. Was absolute power worth 4 siblings' lives? Cleopatra would probably say yes. She chose that path, walked it without hesitation, killed without mercy or regret. She died believing she'd done what was necessary, what any Ptolemy would do, what the throne demanded. But her siblings never got to answer that question. They just died, drowned in golden armor, poisoned in their sleep, murdered on temple steps, gone, erased, eliminated so thoroughly that we barely remember their names. That's the real darkness. Not just that Cleopatra killed them, but how completely she won, how totally they disappeared, how she ruled and they died, and history remembers her as the great queen while they're just footnotes, obstacles, problems she solved on her way to power. 300 years of sibling murder and she was the best at it, and now you know why.